Right now, though, we need to go over to the WFIU studios and Shamika Neely.
Thanks, Dan. Currently, I'm joined by Susanna Washburn. She's joining us live on the phone from Washington, D.C., and she is the Senior Advisor of the Corporation for National Community Service. Ms. Washburn, thanks so much for taking time out this evening to join us.
Thanks for having me.
So it seems that a slogan has truly taken on at this time, a new spirit of service in America. Can you tell us how important volunteers are to organizations, specifically to nonprofits?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, volunteers are, I think, the lifeblood for many nonprofits. I was actually at my son's school this morning, and I was told that the number of people volunteering in our school equals about 8 teachers per year. And so particularly in times when nonprofits are having to cut back on their budgets, I think particularly the very highly skilled volunteers that you see today are very much filling the gap. And it's becoming a new part of the human resource strategy for a lot of nonprofit CEOs.
How do you think that we can get more people, specifically young people, involved in volunteering?
Well, it was interesting. I was hearing the earlier conversation, and I do think self-interest is a huge motivator, and I think it's a completely fine motivator. I think that as more and more people realize that volunteering can lead to skill development, to educational opportunity, professional connections can be made. I think more and more people are going to find it appealing. It's funny, I was talking to a young man the other day who's doing strategic planning for the Red Cross, and I said, oh, you know, you're volunteering. How has that impacted your job search? And he said, you know, actually great. One, I'm busy, so that, you know, makes me more efficient with my time. But also when I go to interview, I can tell people I'm doing strategic planning for the Red Cross, and I don't have to say, oh, I got laid off and I'm kind of between things right now.
It's interesting that you bring up the Red Cross. Obviously, another point of service is also the military. I mean, military involvement in Libya currently, and also humanitarian efforts with international disasters, specifically in Japan right now. How vital is philanthropy and service to not only the United States, but also on international soil with organizations like the Red Cross?
How vital is philanthropy or volunteering?
Philanthropy, volunteerism, and service.
Well, I think it's incredibly vital. I don't know if you're going to go back to Les Lankowski because he's actually the expert on that. But, you know, it takes all kinds of contributions. Obviously, there's no substitute for the kinds of dollars and numbers that the public sector can put forward. But I think the involvement of both philanthropy and individual donors and volunteers is critical, both in international and domestic efforts.
Sure. And I know early on President Obama discussed the concept of renewing America together. Do you get the sense that there is a new type of volunteer in the United States today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everybody has something to offer. I do think volunteering has become more broad in the types of volunteer experiences and skills people are bringing. It used to be that when you thought of a volunteer, you might think of somebody, you know, stuffing envelopes or going door to door, and there certainly is that element still. But as baby boomers have retired and you see increasingly skilled people looking to volunteer, they're demanding a different kind of volunteer opportunity. So you see more of these sort of professional services. You know, the pro bono ethic has gone beyond just the legal field to accounting, strategic planning, fundraising. So you're seeing volunteering in many more spheres than you used to.
Can you speak on AmeriCorps and also the Peace Corps and just talk about how those organizations also really are important to the United States today?
Sure. Well, AmeriCorps is the program that my agency administers, and what's different about AmeriCorps, which we call National Service, and Peace Corps would certainly fit in that as well, is that it's a more intense commitment to service than sort of episodic volunteering, and that requires a stipend. Most people can't show up full-time every day for a year without some kind of stipend, and what it allows people to do is have a more intense experience, gain more awareness of various social issues, also gain more awareness of their community and the organizations within which they're working. And it also gives people, you know, deeper professional skills. And with AmeriCorps, young people who want to join AmeriCorps can earn an education award in exchange for full-time service.
And with the U.S. unemployment rate continually, or right now just shy of 9%. Obviously, current college graduates and also future college graduates are going to be looking for jobs. Do you think that volunteerism is going to decrease in the near future?
Not at all. In fact, the unemployment rate may be at about 9% overall, but for young adults between the ages of 16 and 24, it's at 20%, which is the highest rate ever on record. And so if you're a young person, finishing your associate's degree or your BA, it's a scary time, and you don't necessarily have as many positions waiting for you. What volunteering and national service does is it gives you that first-time experience. I remember when I was coming out of school, it's hard to not have experience to get experience, and that's some of what volunteering and national service can do. Yesterday I was at a terrific program here in Virginia called Year Up, and they had a VISTA member, and when I asked her why she did it, she said, well, I really want to work for this nonprofit. I think they're fantastic, and I know that the primary way they hire is they bring on VISTAs, and then if they like you, they hire you.
Well, Booker T. Washington once said, if you lift yourself up, it's also important to lift up someone else. So hopefully the American people and other individuals will continue to do that. Thank you so much, Ms. Washburn, for joining us today. She is the Senior Advisor of Corporation for National and Community Service, joining us live from the nation's capital.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there from the WFIU studio at this time. Currently, we'll go back over to Stan in the WTIU studio with the other guests. Stan?
Thanks, Shamika. And Leslie, I wanted to go right from what Susanna was saying to mentioning of you. You're sort of called on the carpet here. Let's talk a little bit about the international angle. I was thinking about, you had the natural disasters in Japan, and we had a year ago the natural disaster in Haiti, and it seems to me that that is the time that a lot of people think about volunteering and about community service, unfortunately, is when something awful like that happens. Do you think that there's a sort of drop-off after that happens? You have this donor fatigue idea that we've heard so much about, and then you have to have something awful happen to remind you that you need to give back in some cases, especially to give back to people who might not be your immediate neighbors?
There's some of that, but there's also another side of that story. 10 years ago, the United Nations declared 2001 the International Year of the Volunteer. The sponsor of the resolution was the Japanese ambassador to the United Nations. What happened was that Japan had another terrible earthquake in the 1990s in Kobe. And the Japanese people were so impressed by the numbers of people from other countries who came to help out volunteering that they changed their laws. They began to encourage more volunteering, and it's been developing there ever since. And Japan is not unique in that regard. We've seen growth in volunteering all around the world, giving countries the capacity to help themselves. And we're seeing that especially in Japan. There's been a lot of talk about whether Japan really needs a lot of outside help, at least of a non-specialized sort. The Japanese themselves have indicated that they feel they can take care of it, and one of the big reasons for that is the Japanese have become much more accustomed to volunteering than they used to.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because initially, in the wake of this, the Japanese more or less refused a lot of outside help, and finally, it took them a few days, but they finally said, wait, no, we are going to need some assistance. I'm curious, we'll talk to the others on the panel. Sarah, we'll start with you. Do you ever find that there is this reticence to accept volunteering as though it's a stigma, for lack of a better term, or something like that, that people don't want to feel like they need to be volunteered for, that they'd rather be doing it themselves than be accepting that sort of service?
I think service is a very complicated thing. At the surface, it seems like a very good thing, but it's something that really needs to be entered into thoughtfully. I think the way we approach service and the people with whom we're working, being respectful, really focusing on what volunteers are getting back out of the experience and not just sending students out, for example, to be of service to others. Getting back to the idea of reciprocity that I mentioned before, I think is really key. And in these moments where young people are feeling compelled to be of service, recently with Japan, I think the key is to help students identify ways to be involved in their local community, to be aware of global issues and to have an international perspective, but also to put that motivation to work in their home community.
Each of you is involved in a university setting in one way or another, and there are a lot of universities that are adding components to their curriculums that have to do with volunteerism or community service. And I wanted to start with Abby and come back this way and get a thought from each of you.